Okay. Hey everyone, welcome to the CSI Secret Store community meeting. Today is the Thursday, March 4th, and then this call falls under the CNCF Code of Conduct and a video will be published. We have a small agenda. I think there are just two of the items right now. So going through the agenda, the first one is Chen. Chen, do you want to talk about what you've added to the agenda?
Oh, I didn't notice that I was muted. So this is Chen from Uber. So the question I have when I try to look at into this project is, right now, it seems the CSI secret store support for mount key values as file. One question I have is, what do you say we want to get the KV and mount the JSON or YAML blob as the mounting files instead of just like KV. Is that like what is the suggest way we can do that? If not, like is any roadmap about that? That is my question.
Yeah, I mean, today it's generic implementation, right? So most of all the providers, I think what they do is they parse through the array for secret objects, and then they get the key value pairs, and then they just write the value into the file name with the key as the name. And then in some providers, we also provide like an object alias. So you can say instead of the default object name, just change this to a custom file name that I require, right? But at least for the Azure Key Vault provider, we have a contributor who is working on a PR where they wanted a bunch of keys to be written into a single file because they wanted to consume that as Java properties. So I think it is possible. And then right now, the PR, I think mostly is complete in the Azure provider. But going forward, we are actually Tommy's working on a proposal and an implementation change where instead of the provider writing to the file mount, it's going to be the driver. So I think we should consider this option with that proposal as well and make it possible. So I think we should extend it in such a way that the provider can return all the contents for a file. So it's just the entire blob, and then the driver should just be able to write that with whatever the file name is and whatever data is provided in that.
So the question is, I guess the answer here is eventually it will be the provider's responsibility to um, organize the content and return to the driver, right?
Right, because the driver today is where it's a generic implementation, right? It looks at the secret provider class, but the only field that it really understands in that is the provider name, because it knows, okay, this is the particular provider, so this is who I need to call, and I'm just going to give this off to the provider, and the provider can decrypt it and see what they want to do with it. And the provider is the one that's also going to respond with what files to write and what the content for each file is. So then the provider can say, yeah, you can write these particular keys in probably JSON format or something in a file with .json extension.
Okay. I wonder. I wonder if, say, I want to have a plugin, say a small plugin. So I guess the answer is clear. Like I probably need to, like insert some small plugin or like put some gateway in front of the provider. I guess. If I want like customize some like our own logic to convert the QB into some blob, right? I'm
So
thinking,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I'm thinking say either assume that if we have our own customized like logic to convert the QB into some blob, I'm thinking like either we are using some plugin system or I guess we need to like put a small gateway in front of the provider. to optimize some like put some our own logic on the file format.
Right. Let me just make sure I'm summarizing this right. Anish, you were kind of saying that like right now it's the plugin's responsibility to organize secrets into like files and their contents. And then Chen, you're asking whether or not like it should remain at just the plugin, or if there should be another more common like pluggable way of formatting the files between kind of like each plugin implementing its own like templating system versus the driver having kind of common functionality or pluggable functionality.
Yeah.
Is that a good summary of that?
Yeah, that's good summary.
Okay, because yeah, I can see like this being a common problem between all of the plugins. I think it's probably all right initially for the individual plugins to kind of like explore, but that I would imagine this would be something that like I guess if each plugin ends up implementing the same thing, then perhaps it's common functionality that the driver should consider.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue is because the provider is the only one that really understands the secret objects, right? So it knows what you define in the array, and then it's the only one that really understands the whole array structure. So it understands what the file name is, and each provider does the file name in a different way, right? Like, I mean, Azure uses the key name, whatever is stored in Azure Key Vault, it uses the same thing as the file name. But we also provide this optional alias, object alias, which other plugins might not have. So in this case, provider is the only source of truth, which tells the driver that these are the contents and then these are the file names. And based on the secret provider class, I know these are valid. So you can just go ahead and write it. So what we're really doing is shifting the functionality from the provider to the driver only for the last bit, which is writing to the target path. Instead of the provider writing to the target path, we are sending the contents back to the driver so that the driver can be the only one that's writing to the target path.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, right, like the mapping of secrets to files, right, is only known by the plugins, but the driver could have like a way to just modify files, like to just operate on the file contents, like ignoring what secrets are there, but like remap file contents into its own template. Like could be something that
yeah, I think
it seems feasible, but I think we probably need to like consider a design there.
Yeah, and I think if we also assume that every object that's there in the secret provider class, so everything that's returned back, if all of that falls into the single file, so if they have 5 secrets and all of them have to be in a JSON file or a Java properties or something like that, then I think the driver can still do it because it basically just passes through all the contents it gets back from the provider, and then it's a single file format. But I think if we have to support like a heterogeneous case where some secrets in the secret provider class need to be in a JSON and some can just be key value pairs, then that is not something that we can support. But if it's just a secret provider class mapped to a single file, then yeah, I think that can be a driver implementation going forward.
And I also want to add the different types. Well, like if users want to map to a certain Kubernetes secrets, especially like the cert types, right? I wonder how this is probably going to introduce bugs. So this is something I would think the provider would have to think about. Like here are the different secret types that I support, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, Chen?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Sorry, I was just going to ask Chen if it was the HashiCorp provider is the one that you're specifically interested in right now, right?
Yes.
Or,
Yes, let's go vote.
I was going to say for at least the first step for this, maybe Chen, if you want, you can create an issue in the driver repo and then add your comments to it, and then we can probably start the discussion there.
Sure, I can do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I wonder if the specific scenario you want, would it also be helpful to open a corresponding issue in the HashiCorp Vaults provider to get feedback from like Tom, who may have some thoughts around how that should be introduced in that provider?
Yeah, sure. I think the goal here is like, I guess the goal here is to figure out the right way to move forward and understand the roadmap of CSI secret store. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll also link the PI that we have in the Azure provider. One of the users has been implementing, so maybe that can also be like a starting point or as a reference. Okay. Did you have anything else, Chen?
No, thank you.
So the next one on the agenda was an item that I had. So in the last 2 weeks, I've been running load tests with the CSI driver. And then the test scenario is mostly been testing with a cluster with about 250 nodes, and then trying to scale up the number of pods with CSI. So there are some issues that I found, and then I've written a doc on the optimization for it. So and I also have a PR which basically introduces all the changes. So I think it'll be great if we can review this doc and also the PR and see if it looks valid. But the general idea is we use controller runtime for the sync controller, which does not have filtered watch. So when the CSI driver is running on every single node, it establishes a watch connection with the API server, and then it caches the resources across the entire server. So if you have about 5K pods, every single CSI driver pod will cache the 5K pod. And then that puts a lot of load on the API server. And when the number of nodes increases, the number of driver pods increases, and then that just puts too much load and causes the API server to crash. So one way to get around that was to basically vendor in the cache package that's there in the controller runtime, and then add option to use a field and the label selector while creating a cache informer. So that way we could do filtered watch for all the resources. And when I say filtered watch, I think the part is for the pods, we can use the pod name. So that means each CSI driver pod only watches for pods within the same node as the CSI driver. And then for the secret provider class pod status, when we introduced this custom resource, we also added a custom label with the node name. So we can do a filtered watch only for the pod status that belong to the same node as the CSI. And the last part is enabling filtered watch for the Kubernetes secret, right? So with the v0.0.14 of the driver, we introduced a label called managed by secret store. So we put that label for every Kubernetes secret that's created by the CSI driver. And the only other reason we want to watch on secrets is probably if users provide their credentials. So for Azure, they provide service principal credentials. And I think for the GCP plugin also, they can provide the credentials for the secret manager. So those secrets will also need to have the label so that we can include that as part of the filtered watch. It's for this reason I have introduced a feature gate for the filtered watch of secrets. So the users will need to explicitly enable it if they want to run it on load clusters. And then in all our documentations, we will recommend using that label when they create the secrets with the credentials. And after N+2 releases or V1.0, whichever comes first, we will make that default so that by default, we don't exert too much load on the API server. But yeah, I have detailed all of those changes and the reasons for it in the doc, and then the changes are in the PR. Any questions on that one? Okay. I think that's all we have for the agenda. I was hoping to finish the other doc that I was working on, but I've been mostly focused on load testing, so I haven't had a chance to complete that. But hopefully I'll try to finish it in the next 2 days and share. Because I started with the disconnected scenarios doc, but then I was also looking at the sync secrets without the mount options. And then I think I just wanted to write like a single doc for both of it. So I've just been doing that and then discussing with Tommy offline. So. And in terms of the security audit, so they're still waiting for vendor pitches. So they have gotten only one response until now. So it's still in progress, and they're looking to extend the RFP date so that they can have more vendors pitching.
I'm also a little delayed on the IO consolidation implementation, but making some progress on it. So hopefully next time we'll have more on that.
Sorry, about the security audit, is that the new Kubernetes security audit?
Yeah, the 2021.
Okay, for Kubernetes as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. You said that there's only one vendor that sent the RFP?
So they actually didn't send the RFP. They had a question, but the question was more about the generic one. They just wanted to know who are the members and stuff, but I don't think they've really received any pitches from the vendors. So they're actually going to contact the vendors directly.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I see this is the first time you've joined our call. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, sure. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, my name is Magno. I work for Trend Micro, and I do cloud and container security research there. And I'm also part of the CNCF SIG security team.
Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it. Those are the items that we have in the agenda. If you don't have any other questions, then we all get about 35 minutes back. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good to see everyone. Bye.